Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Solving Sorcery. This is not going to be an episode. Actually, it's just a minor introduction into the final part of the three-part series of Seasons of the Witch. I'm so happy all of you were able to join me on this beautiful journey. It has been a magnificent year filled with, so many types of, highs and lows, many types of episodes, many types of, I'm not even sure what we really want to be calling it, but it was just a journey. I'm so happy for it. Also, I would like to point out the fact that, it is Yuletide season. Well, Yule season. Or, Festivus, whatever we want to call it, the solstice. Technically, it starts on the 21st. That's usually where we sort of start these sort of things. Sort of how the spring equinox starts, I believe, on, March 21st, where sort of, life begins anew. The winter solstice is essentially the opposite of that thing. It sort of starts on December 21st. So, it's going to be a time, a lot of things happening. I will no doubt be uploading things, I think, through the winter as well, because I feel like we need to, keep up, keep in touch, keep in contact. There's going to be a lot of things you can do to not only keep warm, but to, keep yourself, sort of safe, shielded, to give yourself that sort of energy that a lot of people lack during the winter, because that is a time where, the world sort of sleeps. And just because something is sleeping doesn't mean it's not alive, or doesn't mean that things can't happen. So I want all of you to, be safe, be happy, be jolly and merry, and to enjoy this time. Yes, I know I have the facial hair. I'm trying to, think of something to do, something a bit different. But without further more delay, thank you so much for watching and enjoy the show.
And just to move it forward as well, I guess along that death thing, I mentioned before, I think how we have the concept of things like cemeteries or graveyards, and then I remember in the video or two I've seen, you have witches like, I think, Olivia, Witch of Wonderlust, and I think you also have other witches like Hearth Witch and other people, and I think maybe even Ivy Corvus. That I think they mentioned a concept of graveyard guardians, or I guess cemetery guardians.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just sort of explain what those are, and I guess how they would operate, and why they reside in a place where, like a cemetery, like what's the need to protect something dead? Like, why can't spirits just move on from a cemetery graveyard?
I don't think it's so much about protecting the dead. You want to talk about what a graveyard guardian is?
Yeah. So a graveyard guardian is a spirit of liminality. They exist between the world of the living and the dead, and their entire purpose is to keep the dead in.
Okay.
And to make sure that the dead who are in there are resting.
Okay.
And depending on your culture, your guardians come from different places. So in a lot of voodoo culture, you have the Loa or the Gede Baron Sandi and Maman Brigitte. But when you look at those spirits, those are the first people buried in the cemetery. Okay. Cemeteries and graveyards are different things, right? So you have graveyards, which were connected to churches, and then cemeteries, which are usually a huge conglomeration of different things. And even if you go to places like New Orleans, there used to be strictly, this is a Catholic cemetery, this is a Masonic cemetery, this is this. And because of the increasing population of diversity in the world, which is a great thing, these guardians are set when it is when the graveyard is, when the cemetery is delineated as the city of the dead.
Okay.
And so the cemetery guardians are there to ensure respect and to ensure that what happens or what is going on in the graveyard stays in the graveyard. They're liminal, depending on who and what you believe in. I am so sorry. I am so tired.
You yawning and me coughing. Good Lord.
Depending on your traditions and what you believe in, for me, the guardians are spirits that are there to keep things good. And if I can build a relationship with those guardians, then I could probably work with the spirits of the graveyard a little bit more effectively, or the cemetery more effectively. Whereas in other cultures and other traditions, it's different. So the guardians are usually, for me, are delineated or placed by a spirit such as Hecate,
Okay.
who basically goes, protect this particular facet of my horde.
Okay.
Keep them here until I call them. And that's why there's so much superstition around how to enter a cemetery or graveyard and how to leave a cemetery or graveyard. So that way those things can't follow you home. Because the guardians make sure of that, but it's really easy for the dead to use the living as a vehicle.
Yeah.
Which is why the guardians are there, is to make sure that doesn't happen. Which is why every cemetery has that same vibe of, dead things are here.
Dead things are here, yeah.
I think the guardian of any graveyard or cemetery, I think the confusing thing there, I think the thing that a lot of people confuse is that they're not there to protect the dead necessarily. They're there to protect the space, because any space that we as living people put our dead then becomes an in-between.
Okay.
So
it's a liminal space.
Yeah, the guardian is there to protect the space, to make sure that those things that need to remain within the realm of death stay there. Those things that need to remain within the realm of life stay there.
Okay.
And there are a lot of superstitions and belief around that. I know that coming out of the UK, if you look at traditional paganistic practices, even up into the last century, there was an idea that a spirit appointed the guardian of a particular cemetery or graveyard would basically forever be bound to that space. And it was common because of that, before any human body would be interred in any area of land, that they had actually bury a cat or a dog in that space, so that no human soul had to be bound to that space as a guardian indefinitely. So that's something that you see happening in a lot of different cultures, that concept.
And is it a usual custom to like leave like a tribute, I think, by the gate? I hear that like people leave tributes at the gate for the guardian or the guardians of a cemetery in order to enter or possibly gather graveyard dirt for whatever work they're doing for, but they leave something as like a payment for them to use whatever.
Unless you could determine, like without a doubt, you can determine which person in the graveyard would actually be functioning as a guardian, and then at that point, it's always a good move to leave an offering directly.
And is it usually always a person, or is it like a natural spirit that was in the ground when the cemetery was erected?
Most spirits. Well, I want your feedback on this one too, because this is something that you probably have a slightly different opinion on based on your different practices. But genus loci, elemental spirits or land spirits, they are certainly there because it is a physical space, right? Natural physical space. So they do, of course, exist there. They were there before any human was there, right? Most of them. So they are there. But it's been my experience that those spirits don't personally get involved with that polarity of life and death. Like they still kind of stay somewhat removed.
Yeah.
And they'll still show up. They'll still interact. If you go, say if you go into that space and you do something to vandalize the land there, you go and you cut a branch off of a tree, you're disrespectful in some way to the natural order of the land there, then you're going to absolutely hear from those land spirits. But as it would relate to, say, like the defiling of a grave, like if you were to go in and vandalize a grave site, most of the land spirits in the cemetery, they're not going to care about that.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
That'd be where that particular spirit, any other spirits connected to that human that was buried there, and the guardian, that's going to be when you have to deal with them. Yeah.
Okay. So what are some don'ts when you go into a cemetery concerning the spirits there?
Don't knock on gravestones unless you're trying to wake up the dead.
Okay.
Don't just assume that you can get dirt or bury things at any grave. Don't disrespect them in any way, because you've entered the house of the dead.
Yeah.
There's a reason why in a lot of cultures, cemeteries or graveyards are known as cities of the dead. You are the guest there. They permanently reside there until things move. But you are the guest, which means you function appropriately, which means you do not leave trash. Clean up after yourself. Clean up a headstone. Be respectful. And if you are going to harvest graveyard dirt, unless
you're so terrible,
unless you have built a relationship with the spirits of that cemetery or graveyard, probs don't. you know. In my conjure course, I do teach how, you know, proper cemetery and proper graveyard etiquette. And part of that is you're not collecting graveyard dirt day one when we go into when we take our first trip there. We take our first trip there so that everyone can connect and meet the spirits. And then at that graveyard, I say, this is the graveyard you've now introduced yourself to. If you have another graveyard that you want to go to, you do the same thing we did here, but then you build your relationship with those spirits for at least a week. Until you decide to harvest something. Then once you harvest something, usually you're pretty good to go. And really, this isn't to avoid curses or anything like that. It's simple respect. It's just like if you're trying to build a relationship with a deity or other spirit. Mm-hmm. You are literally going, hey, so I want to take some of your bedding. Mm-hmm. Is that chill? And I don't know. I'd be more apt to share my blanket with someone who I know a little bit more.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Than someone who I don't at all.
Yeah.
So those are some do's and don'ts. Really, it comes down to make sure that you are being respectful.
Okay.
Leave offerings as you enter. Some people will even say leave offerings as you leave. Some people will say enter a cemetery backwards, so that way as you exit, you enter out, you know, as so on and so forth. There are some beliefs that say that you need to have your head covered, that you should be veiled.
Yeah.
If you are doing work on someone and you've built a relationship with those spirits in that grave or in that cemetery, you want to keep your head covered because you never know who else works there. You never know who else is working there. And by keeping your face obstructed, you keep your energy obstructed. So there's a whole set of beliefs there. But ultimately, it comes down to be respectful.
Yeah.
Be respectful. Don't try and cause trouble. Don't take a Ouija board to a cemetery.
Yeah, doing mediumistic kind of work in a cemetery is usually really
don't do that. Do not do cleansing work in a cemetery.
It is no one's responsibility to move the spirit on. No one has that right.
Oh no, I'm talking about like actual cleansing, like someone that we both know.
Huh?
Someone we both know that used to work here actually took a client who he had convinced had a death curse on them and performed an uncrossing in a cemetery. That's not how you do that. That's not the type of work you should be doing in a cemetery.
I think maybe
this one's still going.
Okay.
At least. Just hit this one again, just to keep going there. Yeah, that's how much it has on there, but this one's still good.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're still good on this one.
To add to what Austin said, I think, it looks like it's doing something.
Yeah, it's just showing how much there is left.
Gotcha.
For this one, but this one's still pretty good.
I think to add to what Austin said, I think don't walk over people's graves.
Try your best.
Try your best not to step on someone's grave. That's not a good thing to do. It's extremely disrespectful. Do not lean or place things on headstones that you are not directly connected to that person. Don't leave personal items in cemeteries and graveyards. And I guess what I mean by that is like if it's yours, like something that belongs to you, don't leave it in the cemetery.
Okay.
That's another example of how the things that are of the dead need to stay with the dead. The things that are of the living need to stay with the living. Yeah. That's not a good thing. And in fact, in some beliefs, if you were to take, say, just for instance, right, like you take, a piece of jewelry that you really loved, and you loved this person, right, and you wanted to do something that was like a sign of your love for that person, and you take that ring off your finger and you put it on their headstone. That is, in some beliefs, that is a bad thing to do, because what it's doing is it's putting your energy into the death. Right, it's putting you into the realm or the energy of the dead, which is supposed to basically like speed up or hasten your own death. So
interesting.
So things like that are usually also like avoid that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions for me? I have a lot of questions, but I just want if you guys want to switch it up a little bit just to bounce some energy here.
I am dragging ass over here. I need to count down the till and all that other stuff.
Oh yeah.
So Let's bust him out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you got?
Let me see. Can a spirit cause a wet dream?
We already went over that.
Is it?
Yes, a spirit can cause a wet dream.
Okay.
Hmm?
Can a spirit be transferred into an object or maybe a recently deceased body?
We know spirits can be put into objects because we've
Mm-hmm.
seen that happen personally. As far as a new body, I would say temporarily, perhaps, but that I don't think that body would actually function as like a long-term kind of container.
No, because it would degrade.
Well, not only that, but that spirit isn't really trapped in a situation like that.
Exactly.
So, like that spirit could leave that form if it chose to.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there spirits that aren't affected at all by spells?
Yeah, quite a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
Describe them.
Oof. Well,
You can't really cast a spell at Hecate.
No.
I was gonna say, yeah, most deities are gonna
Deities are gonna be
pretty
like,
immune
eh.
to
Okay.
animistic intelligences and spirits. Like one that always cracks me up. Like I remember when the store first set up its TikTok page, and at that point it was like the height of all of the newbie witches are, we're gonna curse the moon. That was the kind of like we were kind of the height of that on the witch talk feeds, which was hilarious because the intelligence or the spirit of the moon is like, do your best, little human. You know,
We're gonna curse the moon. I'm just doing my job.
I think that it's not that you probably couldn't curse them, but I would feel very badly for the person that was foolish enough to try to curse a demon.
Yeah.
Because that's a spirit that's definitely gonna get even with you.
Yeah.
I think angelic intelligences, I think, would be
Mhm.
very difficult to put a curse on those kinds of spirits.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So with the spirits, what do runes or spells look like to spirits? Are they tangible to spirits? Can spirits interact with those spells or runes, or do they look like lights? Do they look like daggers? What do they look like to spirits?
I think it's going to depend on the spirit, because some spirits, I think that those things in the eyes of a human spirit are going to look very similar to the way they do to us.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that other types of spirits would certainly register those as different energetic kinds of manifestations.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
As to their corporeal nature, like their physical, like could a spirit come into physical contact with something like this? I would have to say yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, spirits can hit your wards all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there spirits that can consume other spirits? And if that's the case, what happens to the consumed spirits?
Yes. And I have no idea.
Spirits, I think, really, when it comes down to it, a spirit is in essence basically just an amalgamation or an accumulation of energy.
Yeah.
That's all we are.
Yeah. Energy
We're
cannot be
just
created or
energy.
destroyed.
And energy can never really be destroyed. And so in that situation, I would say that if there were, in whatever sense, a spirit that was going to consume another spirit, that other spirit, the intelligence of that spirit would probably continue to exist in some sense. But the energetic component of its being would be transmuted into something else. It would be comparable to the way that we eat animals.
Yeah, or how we digest food.
Yeah, or how we digest food. Like we're taking in some component the essence of that animal into our being, though the intelligence of the animal exists in other forms.
Yeah.
Okay. Can a person house more than one spirit long term?
I don't think long term, no.
Not long term, but
Well, okay, let me rephrase that. My answer would probably be yes, but I think that there would be some really bad consequences for something like that. I don't think energetically the human body is meant to contain
more than one spirit.
Multiple spirits for prolonged periods of time, and I think we see that happen in situations even where the body isn't housing one spirit, but it's temporarily shifted over. Like you've got situations with people who channel, where they actually physically become a vessel for another spirit, and after even just a few moments of trying to house that other spirit, the spirit that is not their own in that body, they start to see have physiological complications.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of them.
Can the effects of a spell be permanent?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe what a permanent spell, as an example, would be like?
What you got? Austin did a glamour spell to make his eyes brown. It looks like brown! I'm just kidding. And they've been brown for years and probably will continue to be brown. No.
Spells of permanence usually will center around either something really benefic or something really malefic.
Okay.
So there can be curses that are permanent. There can be hexes that are permanent. There could be marks or stains that could be permanent.
I love how you always go like the baneful shit.
But you can also do permanent healing things or permanent wards or something like that.
We did a spell as a coven just the other night, which is a regular spell that we do. I shouldn't say a regular spell, but it's one that we've done consistently over the years, and it's a healing working that we do to help facilitate bone healing. Mm-hmm. Specifically, it helps bone to heal more quickly after an injury has occurred. And we've done that spell successfully for a number of people over the years, and those people, without fail, have always had reports from their doctors like, "Wow, you're healing way more quickly than you should. Like this is really, really pretty crazy." And that bone heals, and I'm like, that's a permanent manifestation of a spell. Yeah.
Okay. What do we appear like to spirits? Are we like disembodied voices, silhouettes? Are we shadows? Are we light figures? What do we look like according to you guys? From what you guys like, opinion, what you think from what you've gathered?
I think as we're kind of just navigating the world day to day in our silly little human lives, as we're all in the sin, I think that we, to spirits, I think that we all pretty much look very similar to the way that we do to each other. Mm-hmm. Like I've never had a communication with a spirit that's told me that I look different, at least as I've been navigating my life just day to day in my normal routine. Mm-hmm. I've had spirits tell me that I look quite a bit different in the astral realm.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. How much do spirits care about lineages? If a person who's not of a lineage performs initiations and customs correctly, will the spirits not respond favorably? As an example, a person that is born in a foreign land that, probably performs rites or things of a culture that's not theirs, would spirits necessarily care as much about it or no?
No, not as long as they have gone through and they've done the proper levels.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Would you like a cough drop?
Go ahead. Answer.
Would you like a cough drop?
It's probably too late for that now. I've coughed for the last 2 hours of this thing.
But as long as they've gone through the proper levels of training and initiation, most spirits aren't going to care because the elders or the priests or whatever of that tradition are going to basically, as the voices or as the representations of those spirits in the physical realm, say, we give them our approval, therefore, because we have given that approval, it is approved that way. There are people who think that you cannot be white and practice voodoo. That is incorrect. You just have to go through the proper realms of initiation, reading, all that stuff. But reading a Pinterest article and performing a Pinterest ritual to become a voodoo priestess does not a voodoo priestess make.
No, not only that, but that will seriously piss off those
and that will piss off spirits. So the answer to your question is they don't care as long as it's approached properly. If it's approached improperly, their prob's gonna fuck you up.
Okay. And so would ancestors, for example, would they have an issue with someone that is of their bloodline following different traditions that's not theirs?
They probably could, but also in the same aspect, when we talk about ancestors, remember that ancestors don't just mean blood. Ancestors of blood and bone, spirit and heart, but also you have ancestors from past lives that can be very prevalent in your life.
Okay. Do spirits only understand a language they knew when they were alive?
No, because I think they usually interpret it via energy and emotion.
Yeah. Language. The comprehension of languages, particularly different languages, is quite a bit different in the realm of spirits.
Because I'll have spirits who will come through who will speak like a foreign language to me, and I won't understand it, but I'm still interpreting it because there's emotion, and so I'm able to kind of like.
But they'll give you images.
Yeah, or images, and I'll be able to describe images.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're an occultist that's creating your own sigils or runes with meanings to you, do spirits understand them, or do you have to teach them the meanings of the sigils and things that you make?
You would probably need to teach them, particularly if it was something that you had created.
Okay.
If it were something that you had called upon that you knew was like many people were familiar with, and you were just utilizing that symbol for something, then there would probably be some understanding or association. But if it's something that's wholly your own, you're going to need to probably tell those spirits, like, this is what I name this for, this is what this is.
Okay. What happens to gods when they're syncretized under another?
I think they remain the same.
Remain the same.
They remain the same. They just get a different set of clothing.
It's funny because we've had a few interactions with deities, different deities who are who have been syncretized quite a bit over the years, and they don't change.
Right.
They don't change. I think that the issue that we see here, I shouldn't say issue, but the thing that happens with syncretization, or syncretization as a phenomenon that happens, really has more to do with how we as humans need to be able to perceive the god.
Okay.
Right. And so like they're fine. They're like,
Okay.
I still am who I am.
But they're not like, what the fuck? Like, I don't get any.
I
don't get any flowers.
I think sometimes that might happen. I think that there are situations where we see particularly older or gods involved in cultures that have kind of maybe died out longer ago, that are no longer worked with. But that doesn't mean that those gods don't still in essence exist. They're just no longer acknowledged in that way.
Okay.
You know. Yeah. They're an intelligence and an energy just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you do if you accidentally touch or ingest a nightshade?
What kind of nightshade? Because the nightshade
There's a lot.
Huge family.
I know.
And most of us eat tomatoes and potatoes all the time.
Yeah.
You know.
Let's try datura, for example.
What?
If you like let's say it got mixed up in your groceries. You're like, oh my god, this is gonna taste so good.
So belladonna.
Yeah.
Would probably be a better one because datura is not technically a nightshade.
Yeah.
Okay.
So belladonna, you can negate most plant poisons by consuming activated charcoal.
Okay.
For the sake of making sure that Jack doesn't get sued, go see a doctor.
Yes, go see a
If you
doctor.
are aware
Yeah.
that you have ingested something that is poisonous, please immediately go and see a doctor.
Yes, contact poison control.
Because-
Ipecac.
Because even with using something like activated charcoal to neutralize some of the effects of the poison, depending on how long the poison's been in your system, the problem with poisons, particularly plant poisons, is that they don't just attack one thing in your body. Like they'll attack this, which causes this.
Yeah.
They'll attack this, which causes this. It's like a domino effect of trouble, you know. And so you end up happening in a lot of situations. You end up having like this, just like one bodily system after another just collapses or shuts down, you know. And so you can negate some of those issues with something like activated charcoal, but you're still going to potentially see like long-term liver damage.
Yeah.
Or there are things that you need to go see a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, having said that, I will say that the vast majority of nightshades out there are really not quite as toxic as people think they are.
Yeah,
Okay.
like you I'm not suggesting you to do
Yes,
this.
please don't do this, listeners. Do not do this.
But
Viewers,
I
do
am
not-
going to say that you, me, or Mike could each eat a full belladonna berry and we'd be fine.
Yeah, like you might have like a little bit of like tummy upset.
Yeah, you'll have a little bit of a tummy upset. You'll probably have a really cool psychotropic trip.
Yeah, unless you have like a particular allergy
Yeah, it could
to
be
that,
bad.
yeah, then you could have a problem.
Now, if you consume 3, Prob's going to die.
Okay.
So, don't eat the danger berry.
No, aconite though, delicious.
Aconite is
No, I'm kidding. Don't
really
ever,
poisonous.
don't even touch it. Don't even look at it. Don't even look at aconite.
Don't even think about it.
It wants to kill you.
Aconitum is pretty poisonous. There are certain ways you can work with aconite and be safe. Obviously, use gloves. Mike does not allow me to grow aconite. Even the poison can kill. I'm like, well, if people are shoving their noses in my flowers, they deserve it.
I'm more concerned about animals because the pollen is poisonous.
Well, yeah, but most of the time animals are going to avoid it because its coloring is so, like, vivid that they're like, that's danger.
Anyway.
Anywho, so there's your answer.
Okay.
Or a answer, rather.
Are there any sort of herbs or nightshades of that kind that you should never use? Period.
When we say by never use, what do we mean by never use? Are we talking like for magic, or what are we talking about? Like,
Yeah. Well, I guess for magic or for herbal products, I guess like they're like so toxic or dangerous, you should just not even bother using it.
for nightshades, I would probably say no. I can't really think of any that would be like, oh yeah, for sure, this is always going to be trouble. I think every situation is going to be different.
Everything is going to be different. The one that I am going to say that you probably want to avoid is going to be Bergamangia. And the reason I'm saying Bergamangia is because Bergamangia is nature's roofie. And it smells lovely. And the bigger, deeper whiff you get, the more it's going to intoxicate you. And most of the time with bird managing, you're going to be using the flowers. So, but no, as long as you're practicing proper safety protocol, wearing your gloves, and not just, taking the aconitum and going, so good, then you should be fine.
Okay.
It's an unpleasant death.
All right. So when speaking of appropriating indigenous practices like the use of white sage as an example in smudging, is there an alternative that uses a similar method that's not appropriation?
Burn some rosemary, burn some juniper. Here's the thing, a lot of people, smudging is a particular ritual and a particular practice that is used by indigenous people to mark an area for a particular spirit, particular event, particular ceremony, particular people, particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people are like, I'm using the smudge to cleanse my apartment, I'm like, okay, so stupid. You literally used smudge and cleanse in the same sentence.
Yes, unless you are an indigenous person, you are never smudging.
Yes.
You are smoke cleansing.
Yes.
Smoke cleansing.
Smoke cleansing or subfumigating.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Everyone gets up in arms about the white sage. And all I can say is if you cannot get off the white sage hill and expand your fucking knowledge to see, literally, if you pick up Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs and go to cleansing, banishment, or protection, the list of herbs that are there is so massive. There are alternatives. Try some rosemary, try some rue, try some juniper. Hell.
Experiment with
Experiment.
Practice. You can cleanse with anything. If you're cleansing spiritually, really, in essence, what you're doing is you're just doing something to affect the energy of the space, right? And there are a number of ways that you can affect energy. You can use sound to change energy. You can use light to change energy. You can use, I don't know why people don't work with water more for cleansing. I mean, we use it to bathe our bodies. Why the hell don't we use it when we cleanse our...
A Kernip's right. A Kernip's right is awesome.
You mean lustral water?
It's the same thing.
Okay. Could you even use shit to cleanse?
I think you could.
Stinky shit.
I think you could. It would depend on, this is a very chaos magic kind of approach to do this, actually, in the sense that the shit would be, or could be, seen as the physical representation of the waste that you are now disposing of, what you no longer want, right? Because that's what shit is, right? It's when our bodies are like, no, I don't need this, gone. Right, this is the stuff I couldn't use, right? Or this is how we get rid of, old cells and things, right? So you could use it as an embodiment of something like that. Like, this is a representation energetically of what I no longer wish to see in this space. And you could use it as a focus for that. But I would say, obviously, you would probably want to be very careful how you were to incorporate shit. I'm just picturing people just going around smearing sigils on their walls with shit.
See,
no demons here.
No demons. I went a completely different direction. I went into a pulling everything into your body on an energetic level, digesting it, and then shitting it out and flushing it down the toilet.
Yeah,
there you go.
Taking a deep breath and just shit it out.
Yeah. I think that's a good example of how we need to be more mindful, or we need to really think about what we identify, or which magical properties we assign to particular things.
Okay. Are there some examples of persons who practice magic but don't have the equivalency to that of a witch or to witchcraft?
Oh yeah, that shit. Yeah, witchcraft and what we identify as witches now. I mean, that shit's been around for maybe 200 years. Prior to that, nobody was calling themselves a witch.
Okay.
Nobody was practicing witchcraft. You were a folk magician. You were a shaman. You were a whatever the word was within that culture. You were a shovexano. You were a fatukieri. You were a whatever the word would be.
Yeah.
Right?
But is equivalent to those certain titles or names? Are those equal to that of a witch?
No, most of them are not going to be, because witch in and of itself has such a historically a negative connotation.
Yeah.
We talk about this in classes here, because we do teach classes on baneful magic, because we consider that just another tool in your tool belt.
You go to the witch to fuck someone up, you go to the fatukieri to get healing.
Exactly, right? Or, but we talk specifically culturally. We have a large Latin American community, or a Mesoamerican community here, and you see within that community, you see the very distinct characterizations or archetypes of the bruja and the curandera, right? And the curandera is always okay, because they're just going to heal you, right? And they work with herbs and they make everything better, right? The Bruja is the one that you need to be afraid of.
Yeah, she does the baneful stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
In reality, the thing is the curandera and the Bruja, for the most part, they're doing the same
thing.
work.
Yeah.
It really comes down to the perception of the culture and the language. It's very unfortunate. So same practices, but yes, very different connotations.
Are there people that you believe don't need magic at all?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Most of them are actually people who think that magic's going to be the cure-all. If you think that you're going to be able to cast a spell to get over your PTSD, you don't need magic. You need a therapist.
Well, I'm not quite sure if that was the context track was
Not really.
realized.
I get what you're saying, but I mean, it's like, are there people that just they don't need the aid of magic at all, or
Yeah,
that they shouldn't
there are
bother
some of those
using magic
fucking
at all?
lucky
I
bitches.
think that those people, for me,
Elon Musk, fuck him.
No,
Yeah.
okay. For what I've seen to be the case around that is that, and it probably takes a little bit of a look at how we identify or define magic. Magic, I think, more and more, if we look at it in common practice or belief around practice, is that magic is in essence kind of just another form of energy. It would be comparable to something like electricity or the heat that we get from fire, right? So I think because of that, magic is something that really, in essence, is always around us.
Okay.
And I think that there are some people out there who just, for whatever reason, are just unconsciously attuned to that, and they do seem to be able to make things happen without really needing to try.
Yeah.
I think that those people are pretty rare, but I also want to say I think all of us have a moment like that here and there.
Mm-hmm.
I can certainly think of a few times in my life where I've made something happen just with a thought or with an intent, or just through my actions. Like things just seem to kind of just line up, and I didn't have to do a spell. I didn't have to do any kind of work.
I didn't have to get out the candles and the oils and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to things like servitors, there is some contentions within the magic community as to what the ethical use of a servitor is.
Yeah.
Some people don't like the concept of servitor being like a slave or anything else. Some people say you should only have them temporarily.
Yeah.
Other people would argue, well, why not have them around for a long time? They would say, well, you probably shouldn't, because then you have to keep giving it a source of energy for it to persist.
Yeah.
And then you have authors like Taylor Elwood that says, well, I never really dismiss mine. I do something where I let them get nourishment from the task that they complete.
Oh, yeah.
Not really sure how that works or how you would do that, but that's what they claim.
Servitors are created. You do not just find some little random spirit and you're like, now you're under my control. As the witch or the magician or the occultist or whoever, whatever you claim yourself to be, a servitor is a conglomeration of energy created by the singular person, or the group of peoples or the group of practitioners for a focused and pointed task. It can be generalized, but by creating a servitor, you are creating an energy that is less intelligent than an egregore, because egregores are much more intelligent in the sense that they can take their own action, whereas servitors usually are bound by particular things, and they're much more primal in the sense of, this is your job, this is what you do.
Okay.
And
so they have no real, I want to say that they're lobotomized, but they're not
they're not even
super
lobotomized.
conscious or anything.
They have functions beyond what you create them.
What you create them for.
And they can't really be. It's unfair to say that servitors. The whole debate, and I've heard that same argument around, this is basically like slave labor, slave labor. Servitors can't really be considered magical slaves because they're really just an extension of you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, I could understand the perspective of the other side of that argument, certainly.
Yeah.
But if it's something that is really just an extension of you, if that's the argument, then you're enslaving yourself to your own magic, right? Which does happen. So I don't know that that's so much the case. I think that as to the function, the duration that they exist, these kinds of things, it's really going to vary so much by the task that they're meant to do. I do think it is always good when you're creating a servitor to give a servitor an end date,
a death day.
Yeah,
a death day, or and you program that into the process of creation. You will do this for this until this, right? And then at that point there needs to be some mechanism for the servitor's death, in essence.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get really confused or conflicted about that too. They're like, I created this thing, it helped me out. The last thing I want to do is kill it. Right? What a horrible thing to do. But you're not really killing anything. And all you're doing is you're just taking
it back
in.
Yeah.
you know, and then yes, and whatever other residual energy will just be recycled or transmuted in some way.
So what about tulpas?
Tulpas are in essence like egregores. That's really kind of how they work, in that they are often, again, different cultures will have different ideas about egregores, but the distinction between an egregore and a servitor really is that an egregore can begin as a thought form in much the same way that a servitor would, but egregores have the ability through additional energy and through belief, usually from more than one person, they have the ability to actually, like, they become sentient in a sense.
Like AI.
Yeah, they become self-aware, and from that point they are then capable of doing things other than maybe what they were created to do.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna jump into something that's a bit like lighter, something a bit easier.
Yeah.
We're gonna go into some like fun, like like pop culture witchy shit. You know, like what you guys think about it or whatever.
You're all
You know?
about kids in the MTV.
Yeah. All right. Question is, what are some of the best favorite witchy or magic shows you've seen?
I really love. Everyone's gonna give me shit about this.
Charmed.
No,
You love Charmed.
I do love Charmed though.
Which one?
90s version.
You love Charmed
The
for like
original.
it because it's stupid and totally fantasy.
Yes,
Cheesy.
and it's nostalgic for me.
Will Phoebe ever find a boyfriend?
You should have some water.
It's like right here. I don't know why you're.
Here, drink some
I want to
water.
drink out of that thing. It scares me.
Drink some water. My favorite show so far that I've seen, I really love The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
I love that show.
I know that it's a little shitty. I know that it's bad. Like, I get it. But
Hail Satan.
But I really look at that and I'm like, okay, I can see this, because even for me, I don't consider myself a pagan. I'm a witch. And so seeing the witches in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina make this truck from, like, they get their power from Lucifer all the way through to, like, they get their power from Hecate because they were born with it. They're innately gifted with the realms of magic. But then you have the pagans who are all like gods and crazy nature things. Like, seeing that was just, I was like, oh my god, yes. So not that I have anything against pagans, but like I have a lot of interactions with people who are like, oh, well, I'm a witch, and I'm like, oh, cool. And they're like, yeah, like, I worship these different gods. And I'm like, so you're a pagan? Well, isn't it the same thing? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Because as a witch, I don't bow to anyone. So get over it.
Necessarily worship gods.
Yeah, not all witches worship gods.
Our practices and our beliefs differ quite a bit as well.
Exactly. So Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I also love American Horror Story Coven.
Okay.
I'm here for it. Angela Bassett really killed it as Marie Laveau.
She's good in anything.
She's good in anything.
Did you see the Haunted Mansion one where Jamie Lee Curtis was Marie Laveau?
No.
No.
Did you see that?
Really?
Yeah.
Is that the new one that just came out?
Yes, it
I
was a
wanna
new.
watch it.
It
Jamie Lee
actually
Curtis
wasn't that bad. Yes, Jamie Lee Curtis
Was Marie Laveau?
was Marie Laveau in that movie, and
I thought she was. I thought she was
the.
the crystal ball head lady.
she was, but they made that Marie Laveau in the movie.
That's
Why
weird.
did they cast a white woman?
I don't know.
That's
Maybe
terrible.
I don't know. Now I'm gonna have to watch it and be like,
Well, we were
what
gonna
the
watch
fuck?
it anyway. We just haven't yet.
So so those were some of my favorite pop culture witches.
Okay.
I also really love the series Salem.
I don't think I saw that one.
Oh, it's good.
The first season is.
The
worth
first two
watching.
seasons
After
are
the
good.
First
Uh-huh.
season, that's really
After the first season, it just goes downhill. The second season is like, oh, okay, and then like halfway through the second season, you're like, wow, this is really stretching. Then you get to the third season, and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, they're really trying here,
Yeah.
aren't they? Like, they're stretching, but it's still really pretty good.
Okay. Have you ever seen the show Merlin on Netflix?
Yes,
Why that show?
I love the show Merlin. I don't necessarily see. When you ask me about pop culture witchy stuff, like, there's, to me, pop culture witchy stuff is like stuff that has historical context, whereas or has something in alignment with the practice. Whereas Merlin, I'm like, oh, that's fantasy.
Yeah.
Like, that's different. That's like fantasy sci-fi.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna go down that route, then yeah, I like Merlin. But
yeah, but you're also a big like Harry Potter.
I love
Lord of the Rings.
I love Harry Potter.
and all
Lord
yeah,
of
that.
the
me
Rings.
too. Which of those shows that you mentioned are somewhat closer to reality in respect to the witchcraft thing? Like, which ones come close?
Honestly, American Horror Story Coven's not too bad in the sense that, like, yeah, there are spirits kind of all around us. There's different practices, different types of witches. Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is still pretty close. They actually did have witches who were writing on the cast.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, like, the entire episode where it is a witch exorcism, expelling apophis, it was written by a witch who's, like, an actual, like, legitimate initiated into, I think they're initiated on, like, on Buka or something. But, like, they're actually initiated into things. And so they all have some sense of validity. I mean, even the, even Salem has some really good leans because they talk about familiars in there.
Yeah.
And in Sabrina, they talk about familiars being imps.
That was like the first episode.
Yeah,
like they barely touched anything.
Yeah, they talk about them being imps that take form of a creature.
Yeah.
And then in Salem, they talk about familiars being the same thing, where they are spirits.
Well,
or,
that's that old English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where
Malleus Maleficarum.
Yeah.
Kind of lore.
Yeah, and like she has a toad who suckles on her witch's teat, and so so those ones get it pretty close in the sense of like what was believed historically.
Okay.
But there were some spells in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina where I'm like, huh, done that before.
Yeah.
Like the earworm spell, putting a mealworm into the head of a puppet and incanting the worm crawls in, the worm crawls. Yeah, I've totally done that spell before.
Okay, and were there certain spells that sort of gave you ideas from what you've seen in those?
Oh yeah, no, the spell that Sabrina does to actually call her familiar Salem to her totally works. Totally works. If you take it and you actually know what you're doing, you know how to apply it appropriately, you can take that idea and even the incantation and work it appropriately.
Okay.
And I think any witch who's worth their salt is going to be able to do that.
One episode I didn't understand on Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, it was towards the end when they're like running from the void or whatever.
Yeah, no one understands them.
Yeah, I was like that. The one I didn't fucking get was when they're trying to get Morningstar Sabrina back. She's running with Salem. They jump through the window, but they end up dead on the other side. So I'm like, how the fuck did she die when she essentially escaped the void, collapsing the reality she was in with Salem? Like, she just jumped through the mirror, and I was like, how the fuck did this just happen?
I honestly, like, I've seen I've watched the entire series several times, and every single time
the Void series wasn't. It was going really
once
crazy.
They started bringing like
the Lovecraftian stuff.
And
I was
Lovecraftian stuff in that third season. Yeah, it was kind of like, okay, this has gone way too fantasy now.
I didn't mind like when they wanted like aliens and like the Green Man and Pan and stuff, but then once they started with like the Void, and I was like, ugh, okay.
In your opinion, who are some of maybe the cutest or hottest mages you've seen in magic media?
I said this question earlier when I went through your list, and I was like, I can't think of it.
So when you say magic media, are you talking like pop culture witchcraft? So, like,
it could be
Scratch?
It could be that, or it could be maybe from other sources. But I think it's more familiar, easier when you do it from pop culture. It could be from movies, TV shows. I could go through books, but it's like no one reads.
But those are the characters that you see most, right? Depicted at least.
Okay, so I do think Nick Scratch is pretty hot. I love Ambrose.
Yeah,
Ambrose is hot.
He has the same exact sweater.
I know.
Oh, cool.
I didn't know. I was wearing it. I was like, "What the fuck?" He has my same sweater.
Now I'm also gonna say, just like in the real world, a group of like they become known as the Forlocks.
Okay.
It's Matt Oren, Devin Hunter, Chaz Bogan, and Fairy Wolf. They're all pretty handsome individuals.
Okay.
I like Chaz. Chaz is almost a little bit berry. And
That's why I was having a hard time thinking, because I'm into bears.
Yeah.
Like bigger dudes with guts and beards, and I just don't really see a lot of them really like represented.
Yeah, like I like Ivo Dominguez is a handsome dude.
Well, these are real people.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying is like these are people who would be considered that, but like
what about Jude Law as Dumbledore? You think he was cute?
Well, Jude Law's always a nice
guy. Like Jude Law's
I
nice
can
to look at.
I could appreciate like Jude Law as an like, oh, that's an attractive man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do I want to have sex with him? No,
no,
not my type. you know. But I don't know.
Haggard could get it.
See, and I'm into bears, but for some reason there's something about Hagrid. I don't know.
That's because
Like,
he's dumb.
It's because he's dumb, and
He's
I
dumb.
kind of
But
find
he's
intelligence.
sweet.
No. He'd be bringing home weird animals and shit. I'd be like, your pet ruined my bathroom.
It's true.
You think it's Hagrid and it's just a big ass spider he keeps somewhere. You're like, you're not Hagrid.
Exactly.
Okay. Is there a mythological beast or creature that fascinates you? How could they benefit you magically, mundanely, or spiritually?
I love phoenixes.
Phoenixes?
Such
an easy answer.
It is an easy answer, but I do love phoenixes, and I like phoenixes because phoenixes have a tendency. I mean, obviously, there's the concept of rebirth. There's the concept of fire. They're a bird. They fly. I love all that, but they're potent healers. When I've noticed that the spirit or the quote unquote medicine of Phoenix comes through, it's that very almost blue fire energy that I get. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna burn this to the ground, and from the ashes we shall build up again.
Okay.
How about you?
I like mermaids. Speaking of basic, because I'm a huge Azalea Banks fan. No, no, I like mermaids because I think that people often sleep on mermaids. Like they look at that and they go, "Oh, they're pretty," but there's not a whole lot going on. But
Aren't they vicious though?
Yeah, but if you look at the deeper folklore, there you've got all these
Yeah.
stories and all these associations with things like the Lorelei, sirens. So I like mermaids because
I
to
do
me
love sirens.
they have always been a representation of like hidden depth.
Okay.
Which is why I think that on a magical level, they can be
Mhm.
really good representations for astral travel work. They can be really good representations for psychic work. And I think they also help us to remember that like it's okay for me to be beauty or to be beautiful and pretty and and have these kinds of qualities. But there's a depth to me that you also probably need to be careful of.
Okay.
Right? Like we can embrace both the light and
Hidden
the dark.
danger.
I like banshees.
Yeah. Because banshees aren't really malevolent, right?
No,
they're
banshees
more
are
so
literally just like, bitch, something's gonna happen.
it's like an alarm that goes
They're
off.
like they'd be downers at the party though. I think.
That's why I love them.
But you're like, who invited the band?
They're just winners. They're just gonna.
Could
Somebody get that bitch a drink.
she raspy?
She'll a little rat.
Could you use a banshee's cry as a form of divination?
I wouldn't. I mean, yes.
Yeah. Well, because you know someone's going to die.
Yeah, someone's gonna die. I thought you were gonna go somewhere else. Like, could you use a banshee's cry as a form of spell work? And I'm like, yes,
I guess.
yes,
Yeah.
we did last night
Oh.
in Solomon at the Solomon ritual here.
Oh, that's right.
We called the dead in and allowed people to scream,
Yeah.
and wail,
Yeah.
so that.
But I didn't identify that as a banshee thing. You know? Because I was like, well, banshees usually like, don't go that way, you're gonna fucking die.
I mean, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they just show up and they just scream at you.
They scream at you?
And you're like,
That's
someone's
kind of
gonna die,
unnerving.
and they're like, who's gonna die? And they're like, we don't know,
Yeah.
but
Someone.
Someone's going to die.
someone's always gonna die.
What's one of the worst things that can happen to a witch?
Being stilled.
Being what?
Being stilled.
Oh God. I think the biggest thing I've seen happen, the most unfortunate thing that I've seen happen to a lot of witches, and I'm talking real life witches here, not pop culture stuff, is arrogance. They get too full of themselves.
Too big for their britches.
They get too big for their britches, and not only do they become awful people to have to deal with for the rest of us, but sooner or later, they bump into something that chews their ass,
And not in a good way.
And it's really unfortunate for them and I've seen a lot of people go down over the years, like people who were really good at what they did, and they lost that humility, and they paid for it.
Wow.
So that's I don't know. I think that's the worst thing that I've seen happen.
Was Sylvia Brown ever legit?
My understanding is that Sylvia Brown. My understanding is that she had legitimate ability, but I think that toward the end of her career, I think that it really came down to like the money.
Yeah.
Money.
And I think that she ended up, as a result, like putting out a lot of information that really was not accurate because she was making money. So, yeah.
Is there a formal ceremony to welcome a newborn? Like a christening.
Yeah, depends on your tradition and culture, though.
Okay.
So,
which one, as an example?
Like,
what would traditional like folk Italian crafts do for like christenings?
typically you would you'd name the baby, and in the process of doing that, when I say name the baby, I'm not talking just giving the child its name, but in the process of that, you also charge that child with particular strengths, right? Particular skills and talents. At the same time, you would also be connecting particular ancestors to that child as guardians of a sense, other living people. That's one of the roots that we see with people having godparents, right? So that would primarily be, it's all meant to kind of not only protect the child, but to make sure that the child has clear direction through life
on a spiritual level.
Okay. I think I've heard before in the podcast you guys mentioned that there's sort of this strange distinction between the morality shared by a general public versus that of a witch. So when it comes to that concept, if there is such a distinction, how can a witch then determine the right course of action? Or is it motivated by maybe selfish reasons, or maybe something else? Like maybe a witch could do something immoral to attain a desired outcome. Sort of like how, like they would say, well, we're doing something immoral, but it's for something good. Well, then if it's something immoral, if it's good, then how does that justify whatever it is? Like how ancient Israelites used to sacrifice animals because they believed it purged them of their sins and stuff.
It's going to depend on the person and the witch individualistically, and even down to culture and tradition. I believe personally.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I believe personally.
I'm trying so hard not to cough. Sorry.
I believe personally that I personally believe that baneful work cannot really hit or land effectively if it's not justified. So anytime before doing any form of baneful work or any form of spell work or anything like that, divination does need to be done as a fail-safe. The morals of a witch, usually when we are talking about those, we are going over into the realm of like, well, what if I'm doing a spell on someone who's not a witch? Okay, well then if you're doing a spell on someone who's not a witch, they probably won't fucking care. Depending on the extent of that belief. So it all varies on the witch, and it varies situation by situation.
It's situational. We have to look at, I think, again, the situation we have to look at. And to answer the first part of that, yes, as witches, we do have to cultivate a different kind of morality. Morality is always going to be very personal, because that's the essence of morality. Anything that moves beyond the individual is moving less from the realm of morality and more into the realm of ethics, right? Societal ethics or beliefs of what is normal and acceptable, right? Morals are always going to be individual. So we have to cultivate different sets of morality, and we have to, I think, what that really comes down to is we have to be able, as witches, or whatever the magical practitioner would call themselves, we have to be able to look at the results that we need to see, and we have to be able to remove moralistic judgments around things like this is right, this is wrong. It's very easy for us to do something that we would morally judge as a bad thing with the understanding that it would have had positive results. When we talk about, I mentioned earlier, we teach classes on baneful magic here. This conversation on morals and ethics is always a big component of that class. And ultimately it comes down to the person to decide, right? But one of the examples that we give in that class, because there are many people that are like, well, I would never do anything bad. I could never do anything bad. And in talking about that a bit more, one of the examples that I made over the years is like, okay, so if you could travel back in time through the use of magic, and you could assassinate Hitler before he had a chance to really start all the shit that he did with the Third Reich and the Holocaust and all that, knowing that killing this person would potentially prevent all of that evil, would you do it? Because killing is wrong, right? Our society, our morals tell us that to kill someone else is a bad thing. You don't do this, right? But to the ends justify the means, right?
It's like an anti-hero.
Exactly. So I think there's always a gray area there, and I think that's really that probably is just another way to say it. When we look at morality, concepts of morality as witches, we have to accept that we don't live in black and white circumstances. That everything has a gray area.
Okay. Are there anything that people probably don't consider magic, but like you guys say it is? Like different forms of magic people probably don't think about. Like people don't think about for me, I believe that music is a form of magic.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, even things like visual art can be a form of magic. Even things like even things like dancing or gestures. But there's a lot of people that they don't really see these things. They don't really understand. So, is there anything else maybe you guys might? Well, like, what are your thoughts on it?
Anything that raises energy in a way to create change, implement some sort of message, or push some sort of idea across to be received could, in my opinion, be considered magic. Music, dance, art. Hell, you have people out there who can do coding, and in the process of
technomancer.
and like in the process of doing the coding and the technomancer thing, they create this really awesome, successful website that gets all these hits and and all this other stuff. So I think anything that requires energy that is being taken and directed towards something and to create an end of to create a means to an end is ultimately magic.
Okay. And I think this might be just like my last question. Because it's been something that I think I've mentioned on my channel a lot, I guess, my belief as to what I think a spirit is in relation to magic. I know you guys are pretty much animists. Most people have that belief. I have this idea where it's like, I don't necessarily believe everything has a spirit, but everything has an energy. I have this belief, and it could be wrong, where I'm like, the moment something energetic gains consciousness of some kind, then it becomes a spirit. Otherwise, you'd have something that's like, things can have residuals of energy, maybe residuals of a spirit, but doesn't mean it's a spirit itself, because otherwise you're sort of painting everything as being a spirit when it might not really be one. Yeah. I just don't know if that's maybe a fair assessment, maybe a fair statement to
I would
make.
agree with that completely. I mean, I think that everything, even just looking at our understanding of, at least the current theories that we're getting from, like, the studies of physics and things, right? Like, everything in essence is really just energy set to a particular vibration, right? Yeah. So I think the distinguishing piece there is it an energy that has intelligence? Yeah. Intelligence in the sense that it has consciousness, that it is aware of itself, at least even in a very primitive form. So yeah, that I think, to be honest, that I think is really, that's animism.
Yeah.
Okay.
The idea, I think, that like books on the shelf behind you are, have animistic spirits of their own, is, I'm going to say probably not. Like at one point maybe when they were, maybe still trees, right?
Yeah.
They were a part of something like that, right? But as they sit here on the shelf today, there's no animistic spirit to that book. It's paper and ink. But if that book were through the use of repeated ritual, or if it were imbued with some sort of energy, and through the information that it contained,
books end up getting more of an egregore.
Yes, exactly. Which really isn't the animistic spirit of the book itself. It's a separate intelligence that just kind of encompasses the item, right? But I would agree with you. I think that your perception of that to me is exactly what animism is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so as a closing for everyone, I want you guys to pretty much, if you guys were able to, like you guys do already, but speak to a huge mundane amount of people, what is sort of a message you would want to get across to people that maybe aren't in these circles in respect to witches, witchcraft, whatever you guys believe in?
I'm so sorry. It's okay.
Okay.
I hope your listeners could hear what you were just saying. A message for
the mundane, the masses,
on,
about witches, who witches are, your beliefs in respect to what you guys do. Like, if you want to have something for the mortals or for the mundane to understand,
it's. If I were to say something, it would probably be that the common perception of who and what witches are as, evil people, evil beings, in league with some idea of a devil, that is so unfair, and it's just so wrong. That is really what that is that's just centuries of Christian propaganda. And it's not true. And does that mean that there are not bad witches out there, or witches that are, absolutely, of course, just like there are bad anybody else out there, right? There are bad doctors and bad lawyers and bad whoever, right? But that we're not evil, and that we're not in league with the devil, and that we're not trying to destroy the world or corrupt your children. Although I will say that we do eat children. That is definitely a rumor that I want to make sure we need to keep that one alive.
I'm gonna say, we don't need your saving if your belief...
Oh, to the Christians?
Yes.
To the religious?
If your belief is that your Christ or your Messiah died for everyone's sins, you trying to force your beliefs on other people to save them negates your belief that this individual died for the sins of man. So check yourself, allow yourself to actually sit with you and understand that if we wanted to be saved, if we wanted to be Christian, we would go and we would do that. And if you want to spout your opinions, that's fine, but don't disrespect us and expect to receive respect back in yours. If you come to me and you tell me that I'm going to burn in hell and you get upset because I go, great, I've been there, it's lovely. Oh wait, we're here. It was 4 years of the Trump presidency. Then, and you start to get huffy about that.
Yeah.
Probably don't. If you don't want to start a fight, if you don't want to be in a fight, if you don't want to have an argument, probably don't start one and just keep your tongue fucking tied.
Okay.
No, believe what you want to believe and let other people do the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Religion and spirituality is like a dick.
It's like
Wow.
A lot of people have them.
Oh, yeah, but you shouldn't take them out in public.
But you shouldn't take them out in public, and you probably shouldn't try and shove them down everyone's throat.
Yeah. Live and let live.
I think the way you put it was probably a lot
Yes.
more family friendly.
Okay.
A lot more family friendly.
Yes.
That's cool.
But also, witches witchcraft is work. And so for those who are thinking that they want to get into witchcraft and they think that taking one little candle and wrapping it up with string and burning it and creating a fire hazard is witchcraft, great, good on you. Maybe pick up a book and actually learn to read a little bit and actually do some study and do some research and actually do some shit. But also,
you sound so preachy and judgmental.
But also for those of you who have been doing this for years and years and years and you still have not cast your first spell, you're not a witch if you've not cast your first spell.
We're not talking to those people. We're talking to the muggles and the
Oh,
mundanes.
the muggles
right
and the mundanes. If you want to get
You're
interested,
totally, you're on a tangent.
I'm on a tangent. I'm on a tangent.
You're good. You said a thing.
I said a thing.
Okay.
I'm gonna go down the till.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you guys.
Good night, Cleveland.
Yes,
Have a good time.
Well, thank you so much for
know.
giving us the opportunity.
Yes,
So
Thank you for
And thank you
giving
for
me
the
the
gift. It's
chance.
beautiful.
Yes,
You're welcome.
absolutely. Yes, these are amazing.
I'm gonna drink some water and.
Is there anything we need to do as like a sign off?
I don't know. You guys could just give your tagline if you want. Mention your podcast, your tags, of
We'll
course.
do the same. We'll make sure the next episode we get uploaded, we'll make sure we do a shout out for your.
So we are Mike and Austin of the Salty Witches Ppdcast. We own Captain Cauldron in Taylorsville, Utah.
Yeah.
And you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on all major streaming platforms. If you're in Utah, stop on by the shop. Come see us. We'd love to see you. We do a lot of handmade goods. We teach classes. We do rituals, all that stuff.
I apologize so much for coughing through the entire interview.
It's okay.
So sorry.
It's okay.
So
We got the good stuff.
And yeah, it's been lovely. And I'm sure Jack will tell everyone about the wonderful experiences that he had here at Cat and Cauldron.
Well, we'll hope.
Yeah.
Well,
Hopefully. It's been like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands, trying to get us pinned down to do shit.
Yes.
That's
So
okay.
We're busy.
Alrighty.
Right.
Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
guys.
Yeah, thank you.